Hello and welcome to this video on f-strings in Python. In this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step about what f or formatted strings are and how to use them as of Python 3.6. I've been meaning to make this video for a long time on this channel because I use f-strings in almost all my videos, but I've never fully explained them in depth. So that's what we're going to do here today. A formatted string is a way to manipulate a string in Python so that it can do more flexible things. Let's say we wanted to have a string that said, hello, my name is William Mattingly. Now we could print off string 1 here, and we're going to have exactly that result. But a lot of the times when we're working with data in Python, we need to have a flexible string that can change based on certain variables, meaning we need to insert variables into the string without having to do kind of some really robust things with concatenation. So I could do something like this. String 2 is going to be equal to, hello, my name is, and then I could insert my first name variable here, and then I could do a plus sign, I could do a space, I could do another plus sign, I could say last name, and then I could print off string 2, and I could get that same result. So I can add variables into strings by doing some advanced concatenation or some simple concatenation with some plus signs and some spaces, but this is a little clunky. Instead, I encourage everyone to start using f-strings to do this same exact task. So let's try create string 3, and that's going to be equal to an open and a close quotation mark, just like a regular string. We are, however, going to do one thing different. We're going to add the letter F before the first quotation mark. And what this tells Python as of Python 3.6 is that we are working with a formatted string. So now I can say something like, hello, my name is, and I'm going to do an open and a close squiggly bracket. This indicates to the f string that what comes within that squiggly bracket is something that needs to be handled specially. In this case, we're going to insert a variable. So we're going to say first name, and then we're going to just do a regular space after the bracket instead of having to do a plus sign here. We're going to do a squiggly bracket again, and we're going to say last name. And now we can print off string 3, and we have the exact same result. A formatted string looks a lot cleaner, and most importantly, an F formatted string looks a lot cleaner. I'm not going to get into how we used to have to format strings prior to Python 3.6, but it looked very, very ugly and was difficult to read. There were a couple different ways you had to use percent symbols to indicate what changed in the formatted string, but we're not going to deal with that because this is a lot easier and a lot cleaner to do. Now, the formatted string can do a lot more than just insert variables. We can do things like manipulate the data within a formatted string. So let's create an object called string 4. We're going to make it with an F in front of the quotation mark again. We're going to say, hello, my name is, and now we're going to do a special method here. We're going to say first name, and we're going to do that last name, but we're going to do something different here. We want this first name, for whatever reason, to be all lowercase. Maybe we want to do a last name all uppercase. Maybe we're working with German documents that tend to do this. We can pass in a custom method here, and we can print off string 4, and what we're going to get now is that same variable with this method upper performed on it. We can do the same thing with functions. Let's create a function that makes something larger. So we're going to say larger. This is going to take a string 1, we're going to just call it string 1 here. Actually, let's call this new thing new string, and then we're going to say new string is equal to new string dot upper. Again, this is a ridiculous function to make because Python already does this with the upper method, but we're going to do this anyway. New string. So we've got a custom function here. Let's go ahead and use the function within our formatted string. I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste this down here. We're going to switch the 4 out for a 5 in both locations. And now, instead of saying last name like this, we are going to call our special function larger, and we're going to pass in our last name string, and we're going to print it off, and it does the same thing. So you can call functions within a formatted string. Now, all this stuff is very useful and handy, but the real power of the formatted string comes in 2 different places. One, it's a lot quicker than any other formatting method in Python. If you're working with big data, that's very important. It's stored in the memory a little bit differently. But the main thing that I use formatted strings for on a regular basis is when I'm working with a large quantity of files. Oftentimes when you're working with a large quantity of files in like maybe your data subfolder, you're going to have files that might be 1, 2, 3, all the way up to maybe 115 and then 1,116. So this is 11,116. This is great, but one of the big problems that you'll have is that when you try to store these files or call them with maybe glob, is it'll go from 1 to 100 to 111. It won't recognize 1, 2, 3 as being sequential. This is because it doesn't have a padded 0 or a leading 0. Formatted strings let us do this. So let's go ahead and create a list. We're going to call this files is going to be equal to, we're going to say file 1, actually, let's do this. Let's just create a file name, and that's going to be equal to file something .json. I actually just call it file. So what we want to do is we want to make a bunch of files that have the same name, file with an underscore and a padded 0. We want 100 of these. So what we can do is we can print off an f string over the course of maybe a range of 101. So we're going to say for I in range, I'm going to say 101 here. We're going to now print off a formatted string. And we're going to pass in two variables. The first one's going to be our file name. So in this case, we want our file to have the first name file. And then we're going to do an underscore outside of that. And now we're going to pass in a new formatted string variable here, and that's going to be our I. And we're also going to use a colon here to indicate that we need that I to be padded. We're going to say we need to pad the 0, and we need to pad it 3 times. So what we can do is we can execute this, and we've now got a thrice padded file name. So we've got 000, 001, and if you keep on going on down the list, you've got all of your file names now printed off exactly as we wanted. It automatically ticked up to no padded zeros in the third position. So 100 has no leading zeros, which means now when we go to store all these files inside of a directory, they're all going to be loaded in Python in sequential order, something that's very important when you're working with larger data sets. Another thing we can do is we can control the amount of decimal points that come out in a variable. So let's go ahead and work with pi since we're all familiar with pi. We're going to say from math import pi. And now we got pi loaded in Python. So what we can do now is we can say for I in range, we can say 1, 7, and we can print off I. Let's just go ahead and do that so you can kind of see it. And we don't notice anything. So all I is doing here is it's giving us this range. That's important to know going forward. Now what we need to do is we need to use our formatted string to try to get more decimal places from pi. So we're going to iterate over pi this many decimal points. So starting with 1 decimal point, 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So we're going to print off a formatted string that's going to be pi within our squiggly brackets. We're going to do a colon, and now we're going to indicate that what we want to have formatted here is a decimal point by typing in the period. And then within another set of squiggly brackets, we're going to have the I. And this is going to indicate that that's what we want to have formatted. And so let's go ahead and print that off, and we see that we actually have the I now taken into account. So we've gone multiple decimal points back in pi. And I originally learned about this from a Medium article that I'm going to link in the description down below. So that's some of the more powerful things that you can do with formatted strings. There are a lot more out there, such as being able to manipulate date and time within a string. I'm not going to be able to get into all these in this video, but I'm going to provide some links in the description down below so that you can start exploring f-strings more deeply. Hopefully, you've at least gotten a sense of what they are, how to use them, and why they're powerful. As always, thank you so much to everyone on this channel for supporting it, especially those on Patreon and my new YouTube members. These donations really help keep this channel alive, and so if you do get a lot out of this channel, please do consider supporting it via Patreon or the YouTube members join button down below.